Today we are cracking open a case that so many of us know all too well, the mystery of the aching shoulder. We're going to investigate why this one part of the body is, well, an absolute nightmare to figure out for both you and your doctor.
So let's get right to it. Why is shoulder pain so ridiculously hard to pin down? Well, the biggest problem is that you can have a whole bunch of completely different things going wrong, but they all feel pretty much the same. You just get this deep, nagging ache. It's kind of like a crime scene where every single suspect left the exact same clue.
I mean, think about it. A torn tendon can feel almost identical to the grinding pain of arthritis. So to solve this thing, we can't just listen to the symptoms. No, we have to go deeper. We've got to investigate the crime scene itself, and that means diving into the anatomy of the shoulder.
All right, our investigation kicks off at the main event, the glenohumeral joint. And right off the bat, we find our first major clue. This joint is an absolute masterpiece of engineering, but it's built for one thing above all else, mobility. And that incredible freedom of movement, yeah, it comes with a pretty big price.
The best way to picture it is like a golf ball sitting on a really shallow tee. See, the socket part, the glenoid, is way smaller than the ball part, which is the head of your arm bone. Now, this is what gives you that amazing range of motion, right? The ability to throw a fastball or grab something off the top shelf. But it also means the whole setup is, by its very nature, incredibly unstable.
So, to deal with this wobbly situation, your body has this brilliant little fix called the labrum, and this analogy on the slide is just perfect. The labrum is this ring of tough cartilage that basically acts like a chalk block for a tire. It builds up the edges of that shallow socket, making it deeper, which helps keep that golf ball from rolling off the tee.
But honestly, the real heavy lifting for stability, that comes down to the muscles. And there's this small but super important group of 4 muscles called the rotator cuff. Think of them like a set of active guy wires on a tent. Their entire job is to constantly hug the head of your arm bone, pulling it snugly into that shallow socket. They are, without a doubt, the joint's main support crew.
And we can't forget the ligaments. They play a huge part too. The most important one by far is this one, the inferior glenohumeral ligament. It basically works like a supportive hammock or a sling right underneath the joint. It's what catches and supports your arm bone, especially when you start to lift your arm up.
Okay, so just when you think we're getting a handle on it, the mystery gets even deeper, because it turns out the shoulder isn't just one joint. Oh no, it's a whole complex of 4 different joints all working together. And that means we've got to widen our search for potential culprits.
So you've got the main ball and socket we just talked about, sure. But you also have the joint where your collarbone meets your shoulder blade, and where your collarbone meets your chest. And you even have this cool sliding articulation where your shoulder blade glides along your ribcage. The point is, it's all connected. A problem in any one of these spots can easily cause a chain reaction and create pains somewhere else.
Now get this, sometimes the problem isn't even about how the parts are moving. It's about the shape of the parts themselves. And this brings us to a huge clue, something you're literally born with. It's the shape of a specific bone called the acromion. It's part of your shoulder blade, and it forms this bony roof right over the top of the joint. And it turns out, people tend to have one of 3 shapes: flat, curved, or hooked.
And that hooked shape? Well, that's a really big deal. Almost 40% of us have one, and it's a critical piece of evidence. Why? Because that hook dramatically shrinks the amount of space for your rotator cuff tendons to move around. And get this number, it's linked to a whopping 70% of all rotator cuff tears. That's insane. It's basically like having a low, sharp ceiling that just grinds away at the tendons every time you move your arm.
Okay, you ready for the biggest plot twist of the whole investigation? The real culprit behind your shoulder pain might not even be in your shoulder at all. The conspiracy, it turns out, goes much deeper.
See, your body is what we call a kinetic chain. Every bit of force for a big movement, like a throw or a punch, starts from the ground up. It travels through your legs, your hips, your core, and then, only then, it gets funneled through your shoulder and out your arm. Now, if you have a weak link anywhere in that chain, say weak glutes or a sloppy core, your poor shoulder has to pick up the slack. It's forced to take on way more load than it was ever designed for, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Just look at the act of throwing a baseball. It's a perfect example. More than half, over 50%, of the force in that throw doesn't even come from the arm. Nope, it comes from the powerful muscles in your legs and your torso. All that energy gets sent flying up the kinetic chain through your shoulder blade and is then finally unleashed by the arm.
So you see, the shoulder's main job isn't really to create power. It's to act as a funnel.
Its whole purpose is to take all that massive energy generated by your lower body and efficiently transfer it to your arm. But if that base isn't stable, or if the energy coming up from below is weak, the shoulder has to overcompensate, and that's when it breaks down.
So, we've got all these potential culprits, right? It could be the shape of your bones, a weak core, loose ligaments, tired muscles, the list goes on. So how on earth do doctors and therapists finally crack the case and figure out what's really going on? Well, they start looking for very specific clues, like something called the painful arc. Here's how it works. If you lift your arm out to the side, and it hurts, but only in that middle range of motion, not at the bottom and not at the very top, that's a huge clue. It tells them that something is getting pinched under that bony roof of the acromion, but only during that specific window of movement.
And from there, it's a process of elimination. They'll look at things like your age and the exact type of problem you're having. For instance, a rotator cuff problem often feels more like weakness, and it's common in people from 30 to 50. But a frozen shoulder, that's more about extreme stiffness, and it usually happens to people over 45. See how they narrow it down?
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's that a proper diagnosis for shoulder pain is never just about looking at the shoulder. You have to look at the whole system, the whole body, from your posture to how strong your core is, because you have to find the real source of the problem. More often than not, the shoulder is just the victim in the story, not the actual villain.
And you know, when you solve the mystery of the aching shoulder, you realize it's not really a story about a flawed design. It's actually a story that gives you this incredible appreciation for one of the most complex, dynamic, and amazing systems in the entire human body. That very complexity is what makes it so capable and, at the same time, so vulnerable.